just wanted to say that this film was curated from the perspective of people who are already living on the peripheries and in vulnerabilities. And how can, and there's livelihood crisis, there's health crisis, there's personal relationship issues, there's resources, access, etc. And so what is the story that is being told and why that's important? Because you all are students who are going to work in this space. And from our perspective, we want you to see this and then also reflect on this context of climate change, how the vulnerable become even further vulnerable from that perspective. So I just wanted to just share that perspective of curation. And I thought, Deepa, if you also as a filmmaker, because you've made different kinds, you've made feminist films, and then there is this film, and this is the kind of storytelling now that is getting popular documentary format. So I thought if also you could share your reflections on the film, because that would also help in the thing. But so we just do that process. But like Deepa said, let's start with some.
Even comments are fine.
Yeah,
comments are fine. Question, what did you feel about the film or anything? It's open.
Yeah,
there we go.
Entire time I noticed how humans, first of all, they started making the environment bad with throwing garbage in the sea. Then to solve that issue, they made it worse by using LED lights. So it's like a vicious way of cycle that they keep on making it worse day by day. To solve their issues, they're just making it worse. Also, there was a scene when the fisherman throws a cigarette in the sea. The reason why he's not getting fishes is because of the water pollution, and yet he continues to do exactly that. So yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, back.
So ma'am, one thing I noticed in the film was the rich guy, even he wanted to expand his business. So he took LED lights. He took a loan. He told his friend that you know what, you just fish here. I'll go into the deep seas and I'll get more fishes because of the LED lights. But then in the end, it came to the same point. Even the rich couldn't get profits, nor the poor. So at the end of the day, we are just humans. We are just equal. It's not you belong to rich class or you belong to poor class. It was to the same. So even he had a lot of loans to fulfill. And even the poor guy, he had to take care of his family. But then it came to a point where his son was healthy, and the story changed. It gave us small light to the story where they showed that the son maybe he can get healed on his own.
At the back, should I just pass that at the back and then yeah.
I think it was a great film, but one thing that I really enjoyed looking at, and the thing that I liked watching, what I saw grew in the story was the friendship between the two friends. So I think that contributed a lot to the conflict of the film, because as the story and the film kept continuing, you can see how two different people stuck in the same situation are dealing with it in different ways. So it's not just about their middle class or where they're from, but it's also about what they chose to prioritize and how they chose to deal with that conflict. So while the conflict remained the same not the same, but primarily almost the same for the both of them, the main issue being money and how they can get more of it, was really interesting to watch, because it grew in two different ways. And they both reached a resolution where they both, at the end of the day, once they gave it time, it did eventually get better. And there were different ways that they took two different paths, but they reached the same place. So I think that was a really nice addition to the film.
Yeah, let's just let her respond and then we take the other.
Okay, so as I said, not being the filmmaker, I want to make it clear. So anything I say will be from my responses of having watched it, right? So I can't go into, for example, what they may have intended in creating this kind of structure for the film. That is, two Kolis, a wealthy Koli and a poorer Koli. One Koli who lives and believes and practices more or less the traditional Koli form of fishing, and the modern Koli who has access to money, resources, and seeks a different kind of practice, fishing practice. I put it that way. My feeling about the film is really that it's, the context of what's happened to fishing. I think this is important to understand that really our seas are overfished. I mean, there's only one dialogue in the film, I think, that talks about trawlers or purse net fishing. And if you know how trawlers work, they literally drag the sea floor. And it's a very, it's a very exploitative and way of fishing. And this is what has actually caused the crisis. The second thing is that the absolute greed for fish, I can't call it any other word, the kind of hunger for fish and export mainly, not even domestic supply. So if you look at, for example, Japan, that practically, I think Japan, maybe 80% of the shrimp and prawn market goes to Japan. So does tuna. So, there is also, I think we have to look at this, that there is a context of what has happened in the sea, and it's all not about pollution. It's about overfishing. It's about no regard for, there are many laws that have been passed that, during monsoon, for example, you're not allowed to go out because that is spawning time, so you have to let the fish breed. So many of these things are being discarded, and not being observed. Now, the interesting thing here is, I feel that to me, it's almost tragic, that it doesn't matter your resources or your access to resources. The fact is there are no fish. I mean, this crucial thing of that, do they take up another kind of job, or what do they do? Because the fish are not coming back, and the fish are not going to be available even. So that is the sort of context. I think, just to say, there are very many ways of making films. I mean, on this, like, you could do a BBC documentary which would have a lot of statistics and facts and give you the kind of context in terms of what's happened. But I think here, because she chose a human story of two families, and you understand over the 97 minutes the kind of pressures that they're under, you really enter their worlds and understand the pressures that they're under. That scene when he says his boat, I nearly cried. It's like, that kind of surrender when finally you lose everything, right? So I was just thinking to myself, and I don't know if some of you wondered about the title of the film, Against the Tide, and I kept thinking, what is it? Is it that you continue to fish even though the tide is basically, it's a bit loser's game? Or, I don't know what she meant, so I can't say what I mean about that. So, but the thing is, because she chose, I think, this way of telling the story between, two families, two different styles of fishing. Both of them are Kolis, by the way, which is interesting. And you see so much of the Koli, the way they live, like some of the rituals, some of even this kind of verse that, people do not fear, the whole, and if any of you are from Bombay or understand anything about Bombay, Koliwada, actually Bombay belonged to Kolis. They were the first, if you like, they were the, what do we call them? Not inhabitants, they were if you say, I don't say indigenous peoples or something, but they owned Bombay. Bombay was basically Koliwada. And as you said, that this how, they're pushed to, and there is no other work or trade that they know except fishing. And I thought that if you look at the older woman of the family, like Ganesh's mother, and she's a very interesting character because, you get all those things from her. She says, of course, in monsoon you have to take the risk, you have to fish. Or when she prays for fish, or she to me embodies that old generation that lives in that way, depending on the sea. I'm not answering questions. I'm just sharing, like you are, what I felt about the film. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my opinion on like the way I like the film was how hard work and faith goes hand in hand. A lot of people think that oh, there's nothing about faith. It doesn't play a quite major role. But the way how the elder women in the family had a faith in God and how they transferred that to their children and how they're going to pass it on to other generations that are going to come up, and also the way they compared two people from the same community and how they showed the contrast and how certain issues were similar in their lives, but how they tackled them, how again they had faith in God, also played a major role, I think. So that was my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, here, Shreya.
I actually agree with you on the opinion that Ganesh's mother was like an interesting character because somewhere we focused on the two guys, but behind the scenes, their women also was supporting them. So they are like the pillar in the story. Another thing which I
And don't forget the gold.
yeah. So another thing which I found interesting was that they emphasize suddenly that even during times of distress, there are going to be moments where you will have hope. For example, when the wife got pregnant and it cuts to the time when the kid is born. So it also leaves you with the questions that maybe that Koli difference, one is a wealthy one and the other one is a poor one. It leaves you with the question that how will now the kids lead their lives? Will they follow with the traditions that probably their families are following, or will they, develop their own opinions? Or another one interesting opinion could be that because they're no longer fish, are the kids going to be the one telling the parents that maybe you can take a different, opportunity or a different job?
Yeah, you're right. We don't know. Yeah.
If you look at the first one, he's chasing the fish for his sustenance, while the other one is chasing the fish for his ambitions. And if you look deeper into how these mindsets are coming here, it's actually coming from their family backgrounds. His mother was enforcing that don't go for the greed, whatever we're getting is good enough. But the other guy had a big family business, whose father-in-law was running all these big ship industries and chasing for high-speed boats and everything. And this guy was trying to enforce on the other friend that you don't have the luxury of comfort or even the money, and you should chase for it. Come with me and fish on a bigger boat. The other guy was like, okay, no, I don't want it. I'm happy with what I'm getting. So I think this movie clearly shows you that even if you have luxury of comfort and finances in your pockets, you won't be happy. You could be happy even with the small bits what you get out of the nature.
Okay, so we're going to just go to, I just wanted to introduce, I mean, you all know him, but Max Martin, who, also your reflections, I know we've been chatting about your work. So just from your perspective, reflections on the film and the perspective with which we want the students to, also leave this festival.
Thanks, ma'am.
Yeah.
I would like to highlight 3 points you said. It's an enterprise on the margins, literally, margin of the land and margin of the sea. And figuratively, they are on the margins of mainstream political economy and mainstream culture and so on. So it's a margin, enterprise on the margins, always fishing. Then there is this greed for fish, as you said, is greed in a good sense and greed in a bad sense. Greed in a very commercial, over exploitation kind of scene, like for exports and for more profits and for capital intensive fishing. At the same time, for fishermen, that's a necessity. Most of them have no access to formal loan system, so they go for like high interest loans. So that means for every trip they have to make a certain amount of money. That's what the elderly woman says about yes, monsoon, bad weather, but we got to go. I mean, I've seen it in my research on fishers in Kerala, southwestern India, Kerala coast. So it's the fish that drives fishing, nothing else. Not the risk, not the weather. And ma'am, you pointed out the thing about overfishing and fish stock getting depleted. Yes, that's a major concern for many decades. It's becoming even more pronounced because in the background, climate change is happening, right? The seas are becoming stormy. So it affects the shore fishers because the waves are very high during the monsoon season and the stormy season before and after the monsoon. So monsoon is June to September, and March to June is stormy season. Again, October to December is stormy season. So much of the year is like the sea. Arabian Sea is becoming a no-go zone, and the fishers have to go. They take a lot of risk, deep seas because of the storms, and even on the shore because of high waves that is coming from very distant storms. Storms as far as in the southern ocean and southern Atlantic can send their waves here. Small waves come and crash against the shore and they become big waves. This very dramatically changing scene, especially the Arabian Sea, and fishing happens. And they do. I mean, it's their sheer willpower, faith in God, and faith in themselves. That kind of is amazingly shot and ethnographic, very understated, all these things. But it's a very powerful film. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick addition, Dr. Max Martin, some of you may not be familiar with, the sir is in both the Department of Life Sciences and Media Studies. He's a climate scientist and he has also done a documentary film called Crashing Waves, showcasing the kind of trials and tribulations fisher folk in the Trivandrum belt have and how it is dealt with on a day-to-day basis. So we would probably screen that another occasion. I hope all of you see that.
Thank you. Okay, here, yeah, go ahead.
A lot of us would want to understand how do you go about finding stories, especially as intricate as those two stories that we just witnessed. That's the first question. Secondly, what's the duration of the entire production? How does it? How long does it take for an entire production to go from planning to executing them and sort of post production to take place? How long is the duration? And thirdly, how does it work? Because I see a lot of shots where the subjects have been traced to the hospitals to are they it's unlike filming traditional, I mean, where we see people act, but here how does the conversation happen in a house where people are being vulnerable? Are there camera placed inside the living room when it's happening? I mean, how does it work as a documentary filmmaker? I just wanted to understand because I have never done that and I would love to know about it.
So I can only guess. Right? I can't tell you 100%. One very simple thing of how long it took is that look at the age of the child.
Yeah.
You start with the baby grows. That's one way of gauging how long it took. But how do you come upon stories? I think that for every filmmaker is personal. What triggers your interest and what you want to follow up. Because films like this take a long time. They take 2-3 years also, or sometimes more, right? So to have the stamina to stay with a project for that long, it really takes something. I mean, you really have to be very invested, not only in that, but in your relationships with people. So there are many styles of making films, and this style, if I were to be a bit, not academic but something, is very observational. It's called an observational style, which means 24/7, if you can manage it, you are with your subjects, right? And initially, there may be some, there may be some awkwardness with the camera, but very soon people forget because you're there all the time, and the camera is there all the time, and the mics are on all the time. So people sort of forget that that's there. So that it takes that kind of filming where you are really with people most of the time. And then, of course, you can also select what would be more dramatic, let's say, to follow as a story. So definitely the child's heart issue and the health issue is one thing. And then the other thing is also because of the disparity between the two classes, how would you show it? So, for example, that 75th birthday is very different. And if you see how it's shot, it's very interesting that, they're very far from the action. The couple, when they come in, Ganesh and his wife, they almost seem like they shouldn't be, this is not their space somehow. It's filmed in that way also that shows you then he says, okay, the child has, you have to leave. But you see that they're very much at the edges of the celebration. You know, they're not included, they're not up front. So there are many ways in which you film. The other big story in all of this, of course, is money. And to do a project like this for 3 years, 4 years, you have to continuously be raising funds to continue, you know. And you can see like some of the things are very expensive, for example, the underwater shooting, the drone shooting, for example, there was. And also if you notice like, you know, one film crew is on one boat filming the other boat, right? But obviously there's another film crew on that boat as well. So it's about planning, like how many teams you're going to put in place depending on the sequence. So I would say it's a very expensive film. I mean, I think to make this film very expensive, and like, I'm not using it I'm saying it needed the money. If you want to do it like this, you know, where you, that whole LED section, if you look at that night shoot, I mean, that must have been crazily expensive because, you know, you have to have, obviously, I'm only guessing, but definitely I think there were more than 2 cameras. You know, it's so, I don't know, did I answer everything that you asked? Yeah, okay.
Personally, I think the one thing, obviously, there are laws which should be followed for particular reasons, but I don't think it takes into account the desperation of the families that are out there, the financial status, the need for survival, and obviously to attain profits as well, not just, you know, sustain your life or your living. One difference which I saw, which I think was supposed to be highlighted as well, was the fact that in the more of a rural aspect, they focus more on traditional fishing, which also means respecting the sea. So oftentimes, I think the mother of Rakesh, if I'm not wrong, that was the character's name, she often said that don't go too out there because, you know, don't get too greedy for what you have. Take what you're getting. Try to be better at your job while you have the resources. So compared to modern day fishing or modern day anything, I think people are more set on exploiting resources rather than using it efficiently, effectively, and making sure to respect their livelihood as well, respecting the resources from which they attain their financial status from. So I think for me, those two were the most important, and I think that the points that stood out to me the most.
Okay, thank you.
We're done?
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you because, you know, maybe you could tell the students because about the whole fisher struggle which started in Kerala, which is so important. And it's not just that, you know, fisher people in India have been organizing for a long time. You know, they have been facing this is at least 25 years, 30 years old maybe.
Early 80s.
Early 80s is where it began. So I think maybe if you just share a little bit, I think it's good to hear this kind of context about those issues and then link it to what's happening today.
Fishing in southern Kerala, especially around Thiruvananthapuram and northern part of Kanyakumari district, is marked by traditional fishing, which is using rafts and small boats. Catamaran is called. Catamaran is 3 logs tied together, 3 of them together. It's around this long, probably a little less. Maybe a longer catamaran would be this long. And even the boats they use with outboard motors are just about 30 feet. So that's what makes fishing very risky. And they are narrow. So if there is a high wave, they kind of go flip over and things like that. It happens. So fishers were known for living on the margins in stark poverty back then. Like even till 80s. Even till the beginning of 80s, fishing communities faced even near starvation situations during these monsoon months because people don't get enough money to save, and there was like rampant exploitation by moneylenders and big businessmen who would kind of sometimes own fleet, otherwise operate from the fleet or operate from the shore. So during the 80s, there was this popular movement to unionize fishers. And that became a kind of a rallying point for this kind of small boat fishers against trawlers. There are big boats even happening there. So there was a group of, very interestingly, that got tied to the international movement of a section of Catholic clergy becoming very leftist, Marxist. It happened in Nicaragua and several Latin American countries. There was a sort of a Marxist tilt within the church. So several clergymen, several priests and nuns became part of this movement, and that attracted a lot of international attention. And they very effectively unionized the fishermen. They had a series of protests and marches and so on. And this monsoon banning came after one of those struggles. That's a result of that. And also sort of a minimum support price and society formation of fishers and on the side, motorization of fishing. So more and more better quality, safer craftware introduced and outboard motors were there. So you don't see that stark poverty there. People are looking at middle class, kind of low middle class, but still on the edges, still exploited on a different level because of market dynamics. So that 80s changed a lot for these fishermen who were like living in poverty. So that became a sort of a self-assertion space in buses. They were not allowed in buses. Fishermen, women were kind of expelled from buses and all that. So all those rights people got. So this is still is an unfinished product. Fishers are still live on the edges, still is discriminated against, still precarious because fish is a very perishable product which cannot be stored locally. So the price is less.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for putting that context out. I just want to thank you, Deepa, for kind of giving us this time. Thank you all of you for being here.